Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great,
Yeah.
great, great. Good to see you, good people today. And so, last time, did we talk about animal rights?
Yes.
Okay, so we finished that. Okay, good. Now, refresh my memory. I got out of order in my lectures. Have I covered Nietzsche with you guys? I did I not?
Yes.
Okay, all right. You didn't say that with confidence. And I covered relativism.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. Okay, great, great, great. All right. So before I start on the topic, I am posting an extra credit assignment. In fact, I will do it either this afternoon or tonight, probably this afternoon. And it's something that I think I referred to previously. It's an ethical argumentation exercise. The first one I'm going to post deals with an argument with regard to whether or not a hamburger is a sandwich. And so really, that is just a preliminary lecture in order for you to know how to write that and write both sides of the argument. And so I will post a video that gives you instructions regarding that. And then I will post the hypothetical with regard to that. And you can do that for extra credit. It's not mandatory, it's extra credit. It's a one-page assignment, one-page single-spaced, but you'll have ample material for that one page. You'll not have to sweat green paint in order to come up with what to write. So the first time we do this, I'll be pretty directive, and I'm just leading you through how I want you to do it and how to present an ethical argument that argues both sides and then reaches a conclusion. Then next week, I will post another extra credit assignment that has to do with the topic of no vehicles in the city park. And it gives you a statute, and then it gives you two hypotheticals, and you can address whether or not those instances violate that statute. And you argue both sides. One deals with a man taking a shortcut through the city park for work. Another one deals with a buggy in the city park. So you can argue those, and I'll talk to you more about that. So that's two of them. And then I'll have probably a couple more before the semester ends, and this kind of thing. So, but I'll get the first one posted tonight, and it shows you the formatting I want you to use. It shows you how to work your way through the issue. And so tonight's that I will post will be pretty precise and pretty directive, and will give you a lot of information. You'll be more on your own in the second one. I was going to say something else about that. Once again, it's extra credit. However, on the final exam, what I will do, so that you understand the formula, I will say on the final exam, even though I don't ask essays or short answer, I'll give you a fact pattern or of some sort, and ask for you to sum up the issue. Which of the following represents the best issue statement? Which of the following represents the best argument for? Which of the following represents the best argument against? But we'll talk more about that as we approach the final. All right, so that's that. So I'll get that posted tonight or this afternoon at the latest tonight. And that's that. Do y'all have any questions for me? I know someone's going to say, I didn't score as well as I wanted to score on the exam, and I understand that. That's why I'm giving some extra credit, and I haven't completed the curve and those things. So we'll get that done. I found that I have to go in one by one and add curve points. So that's going to take me some time. All right, any questions? So let's start on ethics then. Let's talk about today ethical emotivism. And I will pull up my slide.
I'm sorry, Professor, I do have a quick question.
Ask away.
Because we talked about, because we went kind of like out of order a bit, and we talked about animal rights. Do you know what forum that is related to?
That's related to the, yes, I do. It's going to be I think the very last in the semester.
Okay.
Yeah, the very last. I'm sorry, I jumped to that. I shouldn't have jumped to that, but I did.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, let me see. All right. Yes, I typically tend to be pretty organized, and this, for some reason, I wanted to jump, and I jumped, and I shouldn't have jumped because it's thrown off my schedule. Okay, so I'm going to pull up this slide that has to do with ethical emotivism. Okay, so ethical emotivism. Now then, let me kind of refresh we haven't talked about this, right?
No.
No, okay, good. All right, ethical emotivism. Ethical emotivism is an interesting theory, and we'll get back to applied stuff in the next class, but this is on the exam and I need to cover it. Ethical emotivism. So that ethical emotivism is a theory that refers to exactly what the title says. It says that ethical statements are nothing more than emotional statements, emotional utterances. They're not statements regarding truth or anything to that effect. They are simply ethical, they are simply emotional statements. The advocate for this position is a guy by the name of A.J. Ayer. All right, so by the end of this topic, you should be able to define the theory of emotivism. You should be able to understand why it's called also the boo-hurrah theory of ethics. And you should be familiar with the terms analytic and synthetic statements. All right, so emotivism. Emotivism is a theory that believes that objective moral laws simply do not exist. So this says that there are no universal absolutes. This is an anti-ethics theory. There are no universal absolutes that apply to all people of all eras, of all times. Moral laws that are objective do not exist. It's also a non-cognitivist theory. What do I mean by that? I mean that it is a theory that says that ethical statements are not statements of rationality or reason or logic. They are simply emotional statements, which leads to the next statement on the slide. Moral terms express personal emotional attitudes and not propositions. This theory says that when I say capital punishment is unethical, then they're saying that is not a propositional statement or a rational statement. They're saying that that is an emotional statement, that there's something about the notion of capital punishment that affects me emotionally to the point that I want to condemn it and try to dissuade others from endorsing it. Ethical terms are just expressions of personal approval, hurrah, or they are statements of personal disapproval, boo. This explains why people disagree about morality, they say. So the analogy that Ayer, who is the advocate, A.J. Ayer, who was the advocate of this theory, uses is somewhat like if we go to an athletic event, and in that athletic event, our team does something well, then we say hurrah, or we, in some shape, form, or fashion, we're expressing the spirit of hurrah. And by that, expressing the spirit of hurrah with whatever verbiage we might use, we're trying to encourage the team to do that again. We're affirming that they did that. But on the other hand, conversely, whenever we say boo, whatever verbiage we might use, as vulgar as it might be, when we say boo to what our team has done, we are expressing our emotional dissatisfaction with what they have done, and we are trying to dissuade them from doing that again. So Ayer says ethical statements are essentially just like that. When I say abortion is wrong, I'm saying boo. I'm trying to dissuade people from engaging in abortion because it makes me uncomfortable. It violates my personal comfort zone of a sort. But then on the other hand, when I say abortion is right, that's hurrah. And so I'm trying to encourage folks to pursue it as a valid option because it is emotionally validating in some sense. I'm secure with it. I'm comfortable with it. So that's why the theory of ethical emotivism is called the boo hurrah theory. And that's a really good way to remember it. Now, A.J. Ayer, as I said on this slide, is the primary proponent of ethical emotivism. I think he's dead now. But he says that ethical statements are neither verifiable nor analytic. All right, now let me talk about that notion of verifiability that A.J. Ayer is talking about there. He says that ethical statements are not verifiable statements. Now, A.J. Ayer was a scientist. He was a member of the Vienna Circle, also known as the logical positivist. A.J. Ayer was a scientist. As a scientist, Ayer knew that you verify scientific truth empirically by following the scientific method, by utilizing the senses. He was comfortable with knowledge as being only probability rather than 100% certainty. So, in short, A.J. Ayer, as a good scientist, only regarded as truth that which can be scientifically verified through the senses via the scientific method. Well, Ayer runs into a problem, or he says we all run into a problem with regard to ethical statements. And I may have alluded to this in the past, but let me illustrate it once again. If I've already illustrated it, let me illustrate it once again. Ayer says you can demonstrate the nature of water, H2O, by the combination of hydrogen and oxygen in the right amounts under the right circumstances. That combination, scientifically, using the scientific method and scientific observation, will always produce water. All right? That's a scientifically verifiable reality via the scientific method that you can use in the lab. Hydrogen, oxygen equals water in the right amounts. But Mr. Ayer says that ethical statements cannot measure up to that principle of verifiability. For example, if I say abortion is wrong, I cannot scientifically verify that. I cannot scientifically prove it. I cannot scientifically disprove it. Ethical statements are in a category of their own. So ethical statements, he says, are not verifiable and they are not true by definition. So he says we cannot regard any ethical statement as truth. Rather than being truth, it's an emotional statement, or really, he says in his own writings, it's disguised nonsense. Ethical statements are disguised nonsense. They're dressed up as truth, but they're really nonsensical. Why are they nonsensical? They're nonsensical because we cannot prove them via the senses. So once again, I say capital punishment is immoral. How do I prove that? I can't prove that scientifically. It's just a hard to prove statement. I can't prove it via my senses. I can't prove it scientifically. I can't prove it via the scientific method. I can't prove it in a scientific lab. I can't put on a white coat and go through the steps of the scientific method. I can't do it. So as a result, A.J. Ayer says if it can't be verified scientifically, it cannot be regarded as truth. So he says ethical statements as well as religious statements, he says, are disguised nonsense because they do not pass the principle of verifiability. All right, now notice the next statement under A.J. Ayer. Ethical statements are made to express joy or pain. So I'm expressing really kind of a sentimentality when I make an ethical statement about a moral issue, a physician-assisted suicide, capital punishment, abortion, homosexuality, euthanasia. I'm emotionally, it makes me comfortable, so I affirm it and try to persuade others to affirm it, or it makes me uncomfortable, and so I disaffirm it and try to encourage others to disaffirm it. So the point being that ethical statements, while they are disguised nonsense, are nonetheless statements that are intended to persuade people. They are intended to persuade people, just like we try to persuade the team to run that play again or dissuade the team from running that play again. So we're trying to encourage people to adopt our position on an ethical issue. All right. So any questions about that? Does that make sense? Are you with me?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting theory, this theory of emotivism. Emotivism. It's all about emotion, the boo hurrah theory. All right. So let me put that in the slideshow and do this and do this. All right. That's Mr. Ayer right there. He looks rather weary and warm, but there are some interviews with him online. He's very brilliant. He was a very brilliant human being, but he was a scientist to a fault. So emotivism challenges. No basic moral principles can be established with emotivism. All right. So with emotivism, we can't agree that it's wrong to kill. With emotivism, we can't agree that it's wrong to steal. Because when I make ethical statements, there's just no way to verify that scientifically. So ethical debate, as the slide says, suddenly becomes pointless activity. Why would we debate about something that is disguised nonsense? It varies from individual to individual. It's based upon emotions and based upon comfort. You have your comfort zone, I have my comfort zone. You have your discomfort zone, I have mine. So it's naturally that we're going to disagree on these issues and that there not be any kind of universal agreements on these issues. All right. our and that last bullet point says the extent to which our moral terms are just expressions of our emotions. That's essentially what emotivism is saying, that ethical statements are disguised nonsense. They are simply no more than emotional statements. All right. Emotivism is an ethical theory which says that moral statements are just expressions of feelings or emotions. It is a non-cognitive theory. By that, I mean that it is a non-rational, non-reasonable, non-logical ethical statements, or non-rational, non-reasonable, non-logical. They are just emotions. Ethical statements cannot be proven to be true or false. Therefore, objective moral laws such as thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear, those objective, universal, absolute moral laws simply do not exist. Those moral laws are just nothing more than emotional statements intended to persuade people in a group, or people in a society, or people in a culture. All right, so does that make sense thus far?
Yes.
All right. This is a pretty this is a theory that not only addressed ethics, but it also addresses religious statements, such as the statement "there is a God." Okay, if I say there is a God religiously, the ethical emotivist would say that's disguised nonsense, because you cannot verify via the scientific method that there is a God. And this happens in our biology classes all the time. I'll chase a little rabbit here. It happens in our biology labs and in our science labs all the time. And I'm not beating up on the people who work in those labs, but I'm just trying to point out something here, that the scientists frequently will say, well, I don't believe in God because it's simply not verifiable. I can't verify that there is or is not a God. It doesn't pass the principle of verifiability of the scientific method. Okay, let's grant that that's true to some extent. At that point, the scientist has stopped being a scientist and started being a philosopher. When the scientist says there is no God, well, you can't verify that there is, but you can't verify that there isn't. So we've left the realm of science and we've moved into the realm of philosophy. And so you can't verify by science that there is a God, but you also can't verify by science that there is no God. So the scientist, the white frocked priest over in the science lab, as sincere and as much good as science produces, the scientist has departed from science and started delving into philosophy, which is a totally different realm. So all that is to say that has its origins, really, its culmination in logical positivism and in the emotivists that we're talking about. These were scientists who said, I will not regard anything as true unless it's scientifically verifiable. So, emotivism on this slide. In the 1920s, there were a group of scientists, of which one was Mr. A.J. Ayer, who we're talking about, who developed a theory called logical positivism. And that group of scientists became known as the Vienna Circle. So A.J. Ayer became a part of a group of scientists in Vienna. They became known as the Vienna Circle. And so they endorsed wholeheartedly the scientific method as the measure of all ultimate truth. They were all scientists. It consisted of people like A.J. Ayer, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Rudolf Carnap. They were all scientists. There were more, but that's the Trinity at the head of it. And so they were all scientists. And so they endorsed what was called logical positivism. Logical positivism, as indicated on the slide in front of you, said only what can be tested and verified can be meaningful, verified scientifically. They were scientists. So they all come together. They formed this movement called logical positivism. And they said only that which can be verified scientifically is meaningful. So therefore, ethical statements and religious statements, for example, are not meaningful because they cannot be verified scientifically. In other words, ethical statements and religious statements are disguised nonsense, in the words of A.J. Ayer. And that's him. His book was Language, Truth, and Logic. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this. A statement is meaningful only if it can be verified. I'm really trying to pound that home because that's so important. Scientific verification, empirical verification. If it can't be verified scientifically, it has no meaning. Now then, Mr. Ayer distinguishes between two methods by which one can verify something as true. Something can be verified synthetically by the senses, or something can be verified analytically by logic or by reason. If it can't be verified in one of those ways, it is nonsense. All right, so let's look at those. Synthetic statements. Now, this is where I'm going to need you to wake up and participate with me, all right? All right, so I want you to jump in here. If you don't jump in here, I'm going to call on you, all right? So synthetic statements, what are they? Synthetic statements can be verified by the senses. By that, I mean by what I see, touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, yada, 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 all right? Synthetic statements are those statements that I can verify by my senses. I see the grass is green. I see the sky is blue. I see the Halloween decorations out of my front yard are purple and yellow and orange. It believes in sensory validity. Sensory data is reliable, all right? So synthetic statements can be verified by sense experience, i.e. empirically. So look at the statement on the slide, frail creatures of dust that you are out there in Houston Community College Zoom land. The statement says, there is a squirrel in that tree. Is that a synthetic statement?
Yes.
Absolutely, it's a synthetic statement. I see it, right? Or if I walked outside, it would start barking at me and my dogs, and so I would hear it. That's a synthetic statement. It's verified by the senses. I have no reason to doubt, to wonder if my senses are deceiving me, and that the squirrel is a phantom, a Halloween phantom. My senses are reliable. There's a squirrel in that tree. That's a synthetic statement. All right, look at this one. Synthetic statement. Anna has blonde hair. Is that a synthetic statement?
Yes.
Yes, it's a synthetic statement. It's a what makes it a synthetic statement?
I can see that she has blonde hair.
I can see it. My senses are reliable, right? All right, so let's look at let's do this right here. Frozen water is ice. That's an example of an analytic statement. Why is it an analytic statement? It is an analytic statement because it is true by definition. Ice is frozen water, and frozen water is ice. So Mr. Ayer and the other logical positivists say that you can verify something either by the senses, or by it being analytically true by self-definition. So frozen water is ice is an example of an analytic statement because it is true by definition. Frozen water equals ice, ice equals frozen water. All right, are you with me out there? All of you. Diego, are you awake? Oh, Diego's gone. Diego, that's not
I'm
good.
here, sir.
All right, Diego, good. April Hernandez, are you there?
I am here.
That's wonderful. That makes me feel, that warms my heart. Brock, are you there? Brock, have I put you to sleep? Have you dozed off? Oh my gosh, Brock has gone off into Never Never Land. God only knows where Brock is. Jenna, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that makes my heart warm. Jay, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Wonderful. And I know Isaac's there because I can see him. Right. All right. Miss Jones, I can see her. She's always right there, fair and square. She never misses. Whitney Stone, are you there?
I am here.
That's all I'm asking for. So, okay. So we've got, y'all are doing, so we've got analytic statements. All right here. Is this an analytic statement? 2 + 2 = 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an analytic statement. 2 + 2 = 4. It's true by definition. If you have two more, 4, right? All right. A bachelor is an unmarried man. Is that an analytic statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely it is. A straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. What kind of statement is that? Analytic or synthetic?
Analytical.
Analytic, right. It's raining outside.
Synthetic.
Synthetic.
Synthetic. I hope by this time tomorrow that's true. Danny Pearson is the principal of Aquinas College. Synthetic or analytic?
Analytic.
Analytic.
Analytic. Are you sure?
Well, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can't see that he's, well, I guess you can see he's a principal.
If you go there, but
I
if
don't
you
know.
don't go
He
there,
has a name tag.
An interesting statement, isn't it? That's an interesting statement.
analytical.
You know, Danny Pearson is Danny. Okay, is Danny Pearson that? That's an interesting statement. Danny Pearson is the principal of Aquinas College. All right, is that both analytic because by definition Pearson is a principal, and also I could experience him as principal. That's an interesting statement. A triangle is a 3-sided shape. My God, how many times have I used that illustration? Is that analytic or synthetic?
Analytic.
Analytic.
Analytic, right. War is wrong. Analytic or synthetic?
Synthetic.
Synthetic.
Oh, are you sure?
Neither? Is it
Yes.
neither?
Are you
Oh.
sure?
It just depends on the person you speak with regarding
Oh
it.
my
I think
God.
synthetic.
Oh my God. All right.
But it
Can you verify via the senses that war is inherently unethical or wrong?
no.
No.
No, you can't. You can't. You're right. You can see
You're
the
right or wrong.
damages. You can see the damages or the outcome or the results of war and conclude that it's wrong, but inherently you can't reach that conclusion so it's not empirically, it's not synthetically valid, and it's not analytically valid. You can't verify it by the senses, and you cannot, it's not an analytical statement like bachelors or unmarried males. Wrong is not war, war is not, you can't verify that. You just, euthanasia is right. Can we verify that by
Synthetical.
No, neither.
It's neither one. My point is, once we go into
Can't say
the
right or wrong.
well, yeah, once we go into the zone of ethical statements, we've entered a new zone. And that's what Ayer is getting at. We can verify these other things either synthetically or analytically. But when it comes to an ethical statement, it's not synthetically verifiable via scientific method or the senses, and it's also not analytically true by self-definition. Ethical statements are unique statements. They're not verifiable. And so because of that, Ayer says ethical statements are disguised nonsense because we really can't know if war is wrong or capital punishment is right. We can't verify that. If you can't verify it, then you can't regard it as true. All right. All right. So somebody's trying to share some music with us. All right. So now then, are the ethical statements, and they're neither. See, what does Ayer conclude about ethical statements? They are meaningless. They are disguised nonsense. All right. So we should be getting the gist of what Mr. Ayer is saying and the logical positivists, Carnap and Wittgenstein. Ayer argues that ethical and moral statements are not analytic. They can't be verified by definition. By definition, war does not equal wrong. Wrong does not equal war. They can't be verified synthetically by the senses. We can look at the after effect, the outcome, but in and of themselves, we can't. Therefore, objective moral laws, Ayer says, simply don't exist. Don't talk to me about that. That's nonsense. Those are emotional statements. Those are not verifiable statements. Ayer explained ethical statements and moral statements are emotional responses. They only express feelings. Thus, it's called emotivism. All right. According to Ayer, to say that the ouch I express when I tread on a pin is true is meaningless. In the same way, moral arguments are meaningless. How? Now let's look at that. According to Ayer, to say the ouch I express when I tread on a pin, when I step on something, is true, that's meaningless. In the same way, moral arguments are meaningless.
Because it's an emotional response.
It's an emotional response. It's an emotional response. So we would say boo to stepping on something. It's an emotional, all ethical statements are emotional responses. When the minister or the rabbi or the imam gets up and says something is right or something is wrong, Ayer would say that's not a moral absolute. That's disguised nonsense. You're trying to convince us of it. You're trying to convince us to endorse what you're saying and to adopt your position, but it's not verifiable. So it's disguised nonsense. All right. Ayer saw ethical language as an expression of feelings of approval or disapproval, sometimes called the boo-hurrah theory. All right, so we've already kind of got that down. Now then, here's abortion is wrong, so says Rabbi Preacher Smell Fungus at the First Baptist Church. Abortion is wrong. All right, Ayer would say abortion, that's equal to him saying abortion boo. Yeah, I think about this. I did another interview with regard to abortion in the state of Texas and the state legislation, and now it's headed to the Supreme Court. And they interviewed some other folks that were condemning of abortion. I approached it from the legal perspective, but they were condemning of it. And Ayer would say they were saying boo. It's not something to be engaged in. I dodged the bullet by addressing the legality of it. I didn't get into the morality of it. I find that's to be safer ground. Boo hurrah. Let me see. Look at this. Respond to the following issues with boo. Capital punishment is wrong. All right. Would anyone out there boo that? Come on now, wake up. Help me out here. Help a man out.
I don't think it's wrong.
You think capital punishment is wrong?
No.
You don't. You don't think it's wrong, so you would say you would say boo to that. You would disagree with that statement. Boo, right? Is anyone out there who would say, well, I think capital punishment is right?
I think it's wrong.
Yeah. So if someone looks at that statement and says, I agree with it, then they're saying hurrah to the statement. All right. Or they're saying boo to cat. But on the other hand, we could disagree with it and someone could say hurrah. Same thing with regard to physician-assisted suicide. Some would say boo to that statement. Others would say hurrah to that statement. Suicide is wrong. That's saying boo to suicide. Others might say, if you're a part of the Hemlock Society, well, suicide is right. So my point is, A.J. Ayer is simply saying, because these ethical statements are nothing more than an expression of emotion, then we're all over the place on this, and there's just disagreement among us regarding these ethical issues because they're just emotion. We really can't know who's right or wrong because they're not scientifically verifiable. All right. Let me see. Here's Mr. Ayer again. For in saying that a certain type of action is right or wrong, I'm not making a factual statement. I'm just asserting a sentiment. And the man who is ostensibly contradicting me is merely expressing his own moral sentiments. So there's no damned reason in asking which of us is right, for neither of us is asserting a genuine proposition. It's just emotions. Some are for it, some are against it. It's just the way it is. And so there's no reason for us to argue about it because there's no factual data to go on, all right, with regard to ethical statements. Ayer was influenced by David Hume, who believed that all ethical statements are simply expressions of sentiment. You help someone because you have feelings, not because of reason, said Mr. Hume. Mr. Hume says, you don't look at someone who's down and out and help them because it's the reasonable thing to do. You look at someone who's down and out and it tugs at your heartstrings and you have feelings that cause you to be sympathetic toward them, which propel you or compel you into helping them. So Ayer is basing his approach on Hume. All right, let me see. What else do I want to see? Emotive. Let me see. Let me ask you this, these questions right here. Why is emotivism regarded as a non-cognitive theory? Can anyone tell me?
Because it's not based off of like thought, it's just based off of feeling, like emotion.
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah, good. Why are ethical statements meaningless according to Ayer?
Because they can't be verified scientifically.
Right, that's right. Define emotivism. Emotivism is also known as what?
Boo hurrah.
Boo hurrah theory. Emotivism says that ethical statements are disguised nonsense. They cannot be verified, so they are meaningless. Although not factual, what can ethical statements do? They're intended to persuade. Ayer does say that, even though they cannot be verified. When I say abortion is right, I'm trying to persuade you over to my emotions. When I say abortion is wrong, I'm trying to persuade you over to my emotions. So emotional ethical statements cannot be verified, but they are intended to be persuasive. Just like at the ball game, when I say boo to what my team does, I'm trying to persuade them not to do that again. All right. Or hurrah, I'm trying to encourage them to do that again. All right. Let me see. All right, on this slide, one could never establish, oh, here's some problems with this, all right? if emotivism is wrong, one could never establish that, for example, rape is wrong. Now that's a problem, isn't it? I mean, surely as an ethical thing, legally we can prove that because it's a violation of the law of the land. But ethically, the ethical statement, rape is wrong. You can't verify that analytically or synthetically. Ethical statements are meaningless, non-cognitive statements. They just express our emotion. I'm simply saying, I don't like rape or murder. When I say murder is wrong, I'm simply saying, I don't like murder. And I'm trying to persuade you not to like murder. They can't be verified analytically or synthetically. All right. Let me see. Now then, let me look at this slide. Here's another weakness of emotivism. If we can't ever talk about what is wrong, how can we ever agree on basic global moral principles? If we one critique aimed at ethical emotivism is if ethical emotivism is right, then there's no reason for us to debate, to argue about ethical things like abortion, because everybody just has their own position and their own emotions, and everybody's entitled to it. So there's no reason for dialogue about ethics. And we can't agree on any kind of moral standards for a society. It just depends. Interesting. However, my counter to that would be this. Hold on. We can too, by virtue of the social contract. A group of people can get together and say, okay, even though these can't be verified scientifically or analytically, we're still going to say that in our little community, you have to live by the rule: you can't steal, you can't lie, you can't commit adultery. You know what I'm saying? So we could develop a social contract that sets up some rules. So I'm not sure about that. Let me see. Surely most people think hurting a child is wrong, but according to ethical emotivism, we can't make this claim because that can't be verified and analytically or synthetically. So this theory really leads to some real problems. All right. Now then, let me stop the sharing and then let me talk about something else. All right. On this theory, these guys, as I said, there was A.J. Ayer, there was Rudolf Carnap, and there was Ludwig Wittgenstein. All three brilliant individuals. But here's what happens. And I hope you find this interesting, because ethical emotivism leaves us with some kind of a mess. How can we ever know anything ethically if ethical emotivism is right? We really can't. We really can't. We can't know that rape is wrong, hurting a child is wrong, war is wrong, abortion is right or wrong. We really can't know those things if ethically. So how do we deal with this? Well, let me tell you how one of the members of the Vienna Circle dealt with it, and that was Ludwig Wittgenstein. Ludwig Wittgenstein. Hey, Maria. Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was a member of the Vienna Circle, who was a logical positivist, who in his early phases believed what ethical emotivism taught. In the early Wittgenstein is what they call him. He believed in ethical emotivism, but Wittgenstein was teaching, I think he was teaching, it was either at Oxford or Cambridge. I can never remember which. So here's the way his story goes. He's teaching at the university, and so one morning he gets up. and he's going to his office. So he gets in his auto and he drives to his office. And when he gets to the campus, he drives past the soccer field and he sees people practicing soccer. And then he drives a little bit further and he comes to the cricket court and he sees people playing cricket. And then he drives a little bit further and he comes to the tennis court and he sees people playing tennis. He starts thinking about those sports and he says, each of those sports, soccer, cricket, and tennis, each has its own set of rules that it works by. Each has its own set of rules that governs the sport, sets up the boundaries for the sport. And then he says this, you can't mix up those rules. You can't take the rules of soccer and apply to the game of cricket. And you can't take the rules of cricket and apply to the game of tennis. Every sport has to operate by its own set of rules. Those rules only apply to that sport. All right? So then Wittgenstein has a moment of illumination. He has an epiphany. What did the recovering alcoholics call it? Recovering alcoholics call it not a transcendental moment, but not a moment of illumination, but it's a moment of self-awareness, an awakening. Wittgenstein has an awakening. And he says, oh my God, this is what we're doing as logical positivists. We're taking the rules of science and scientific verification, and we're attempting to apply those rules to the game of ethics. And you can't do that because ethics has its own set of rules. It doesn't operate by the principle of verification or analytic verification or synthetic verification. It's unique. It's in a different realm. And then he says, we're doing the same thing with regard to religious statements. We're taking the rules of science and applying to religious statements. And you can't mix up those rules, those games. Verification, scientific verification applies in the realm of science. Scientific verification is not applicable in the realm of religion or in ethics. So it's like trying to take the rules of soccer and impose them on tennis. It won't work. So as a result of all of that, he comes up with the revolutionary idea of the language game. The language game. Each discipline has its own set of rules, its own language games that it operates by, and you can't mix them up. So the religionist can't condemn the scientist cannot condemn the religionist, the ethicist cannot condemn the scientist cannot condemn the ethicist. Each is playing their own game with their own set of rules. So that remedies the problems that emotivism and logical positivism posed for ethical statements. Now, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so let me get intensely practical. when you're sitting in your science class and your science professor says, this religious talk is a bunch of bullshit, you know, or this ethical stuff is a bunch of nonsense. You need to think in your mind. Don't say it out loud because you'll just piss him off. But you need to say in your mind, "Oh my God, this is a language game issue. He's trying to impose the rules of science on ethics." And you can't do that. They're two different disciplines. It's like imposing the rules of football on baseball. You just can't do it. Each discipline has its own realm. Religion operates with the rules of faith. Ethics operates with the rules of pragmatism, I think, today. Science operates with the rules of scientific verification. Every discipline has its own set of rules. That's the only way to resolve this thing. Otherwise, you're left with just nothing ethical. All right, so I beat that horse to death. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope it does. I think in a practical way that can help you through some quandaries that you might be confronted with eventually in your academic experience. Maybe if you're a person of faith, and someone who's in the scientific context questions the truth of your ethical convictions because they cannot be verified scientifically, or the truth of your religious convictions, that this mechanism of Wittgenstein, the language game, I think helps us to realize that every area has its own set of rules, and you can't mix them up. We would never take the rules of religion and impose those upon science, and we can't take the rules of science and impose upon religion. We can't take the rules of ethics and impose upon science, pragmatism. We can't take the rules of science and impose upon ethics. Every discipline and I think that will really assist you in getting through what might be some moral quandaries as you continue on your academic journey. And those kinds of things. All right, I've beat the hell out of that, but I think that's an important topic, ethical emotivism, and I think it's very interesting. And I think Wittgenstein really helps us. Now, the later Wittgenstein, the early Wittgenstein was an emotivist. An emotivist. But the later Wittgenstein was much more open to other disciplines and other thoughts and those kinds of things. So it kind of opened up his world. And the interesting thing is, what opened up his world happened as a result of his driving across campus and looking at the sports fields. It's so mundane, and yet it revolutionized his thinking. That's the mark of a good common sense academic. He was brilliant, but he wasn't so brilliant that he couldn't take the everyday events of life and think them through. That's why I admire Wittgenstein so much. All right. Anyhow, that's that. Y'all have any questions for me based on what we've talked about? All right. Well, next class, we're going to talk about, we talked about ethical emotivism today. Next class, we'll talk about feminist ethics. We haven't talked about feminist ethics, right? The ethic of care?
No.
No, sir.
All right. So we'll talk about feminist ethics, and then we're going to move into the naturalistic fallacy. And then I will post the extra credit assignment this afternoon or this evening at the latest while I am watching the first World Series ball game between the Houston Astros and the Atlanta Braves.
Go Stros.
Go Stros. If Mr. Wittgenstein can learn something from soccer, cricket, and tennis, maybe I can learn something philosophical from the Astros and the Braves tonight. All right. If y'all have no other questions, let's blow this joint.
Dr. Carter, I did have one question. Sorry,
Yeah.
I came in a little late.
Yeah.
What was the had you went over the extra credit assignment yet, or you just said you were
What I'm going to do is I'm going to post the extra credit assignment this afternoon or tonight. And then I'm also going to post a video about that extra credit assignment that tells you how to do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So watch the video. I didn't give you all the deadline on that. I'll give you a deadline of a week from Sunday. That's what I'll do. You'll have next week to get it done. Not
Okay.
this Sunday, a week from Sunday. I'll give you that time. Okay, so watch the video and then do the assignment, and then if you have questions, we can talk about that. Although, my God, hold on. I keep thinking this is Thursday. This is Tuesday, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, y'all can get that done. That's not that. Y'all can get that done by Sunday night. This coming Sunday night at midnight.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's this coming. So, and I'll put that on there as well. But yeah, watch the video and do the assignment, and then I'm going to give you guys another one next week. All right. Any other questions? Good class. I hope most of you stayed awake. I always worry about when I can't connect with you, but I'm just going to trust you. All right. Have a great evening. Be safe, and I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you, Professor. You have a good one.
Absolutely. Y'all too. Bye-bye.
All right, Professor.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Dr. Carter.
Absolutely.